the LaxFactor podcast.
What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching episode, what are we at? 282 of the LaxFactor podcast. I am your host, Ted Hoost. I am indeed still alive. The comments, the private messages, the emails have not stopped towards this latter part of the season where I've kind of disappeared due to work being really busy. But today, hey, we have a Syracuse playoff an NCAA tournament victory to talk about. I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk about every single victory. We're going to talk about Syracuse's win, Denver, Virginia, Hopkins, Maryland, Duke, Georgetown, Notre Dame, also all picked up wins. And then I'm going to make my predictions, just quick predictions at the end of this for who I think is going to win this upcoming weekend. But I'm going to dive a little bit and talk, in depth about each game here, one by one. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. If you are watching or listening on Spotify, please just share the crap out of it. Let people know Spotify is the best place to watch or listen to the podcast. I get the most revenue out of it. I never get copyright striked or copyrighted and have my revenue taken on the Spotify side. So the more views and the more people that I can push to Spotify, the better, because at Spotify, I don't lose any money to anyone. And just please go to Spotify and watch the podcast and share the crap out of it with your homies and all that. And as always, you can go to LaxFactor.com. All the podcasts and videos go up there. And you can also get yourself some swag, get a t-shirt. You can get a LaxFactor podcast t-shirt. You can get a Club Lacrosse All-Star t-shirt, Garden Gnomes t-shirt, whatever, you name it, it's there. Let me shut up here. And we are now going to talk about the Syracuse and Towson game. Now, this game was scary for Cuse fans in the first half, and maybe even for the first 35 minutes of the game overall, maybe dip into a little bit of the third quarter. A little bit of relief came at the beginning of the third quarter, but we'll talk about that here. By the time Cuse took that 12-9 lead with 11:02 left in the third, I stopped sweating it. I got a little bit more comfortable. The fact that Cuse went on this 9-goal run, as you look at it here, started out by Thomas Finn on a dish from Sam English, and then capped by Luke Roa scoring unassisted to make it 17-9. That 9-goal run was bonkers. And Towson is a very good lacrosse team. I did not expect Towson to play Cuse to 20-15. In the end, I thought Cuse would probably beat him by about 6 or 7. I thought the score would be a little bit lower than this because Towson's defense, they have a very good defense. But that wasn't how it went. Syracuse came out, shot themselves in the foot early and often with just stupid turnovers, a lot of unforced turnovers, just throwing the ball away. Will Mark was horrendous in cage most of the game, but over the first half, I actually feared that he was going to get benched at some point because Towson just kept scoring goals, and I think Towson had that 6-5 lead in the first. Will Mark hadn't made a save yet up to that point. So the fact that Syracuse was able to pull this out with their goalie playing terrible, that was big. Now, I think for me, the biggest key in this victory was the Boo Birds have been chirping Joey Spallina all season in Syracuse's losses and sometimes even in their wins for not showing up. Now, in their win over UVA, Spallina was held scoreless. He had 3 shots, but Syracuse won that game. In their ACC tournament loss to Duke, Spallina put up 4 goals off 7 shots. Syracuse is starting, I think, and I hope to figure out how to use him and how to get the most out of him, especially when he ends up having a matchup that's just not favorable to him, because he's not a dodging attackman. He's not a dude that's just going to go out and beat you with his speed, that's going to beat you with shiftiness. So Syracuse, I think, is finally starting to figure out what can we do for Joey Spallina to keep him involved in games more often than not, and while still allowing the game to come to him. So they did lose that game, but he showed up against Duke. Now, in this win over Towson, against a very good defense, not an ACC quality defense. I think overall their defense was ranked number 1 in the country, but they did play a pretty weak schedule, so that played into that. But still, a very good defense, a very capable defense, a defense that has a PLL pro on the roster here. Spallina was able to get free for 4 goals and 4 assists in this game. That was huge. Now, how did they do it? They ran him from X using picks, and those picks allowed him to get some space. Everyone knows he doesn't have blazing speed, and against a strong defender that's kind of considered a lockdown guy, that's going to make a game rough for Spallina. Now, the benefit of that you're taking their best defender out of the game, and you're probably putting him in a position where he's not going to readily slide, because if you're going to shut Spallina down, you can't just take the dodge away from him. If you're going to shut Spallina down, you have to take off-ball goals away from him as well. So I feel like when they played Maryland, Zappatello, taken out of the sliding game a little bit. Duke with I forget who guarded him against Duke. Was it Brower? Yeah, I think Brower did guard him, at least in that first game. And yeah, that takes him out of the mix, but that also takes Brower out of the slide package a little bit. So that's key. And in this game, they use those picks to perfection. Once again, this is Towson. This is not an ACC defense, and I suspect Denver's defense is going to be probably about the same level. So I like the chance that Spallina is going to be able to maybe get free a little bit. I got a hair here hanging off my hat. I like the odds that Spallina should be able to get free, get his hands free, get some assists, get some goals again against Denver as well. I don't expect him to have 8 points against Denver, but that was the key of this game. They figured out how to get Spallina they figured out how to get Spallina's hands free with time, with room, with guys cutting, and he delivered in terms of 4 goals, 4 assists here overall. That's monster. Hiltz. He's been this team's most consistent player overall. He puts up 4 goals, 2 assists. 2 of those goals were assisted by Spallina. His last 2 goals as Syracuse started to roll were assisted by Spallina. Another big key in this game, they got Christian Moulet off the field on attack, where he's drawn a short stick all season and hasn't been able to do much with that matchup. I've been calling for this and wanting for them to put somebody else down at attack. Now, I wasn't calling for Leo. I was saying, hey, if Moulet is going to draw shorty and not put up points, why not try, what's his name? I'm going to draw a blank here on the spot. Hill? Is that his name? Who's the kid I'm trying to think of here? Now I got to figure it out. So we're going to look this up. What the hell is the dude I'm talking about? This cannot stand. I will not stand for this. We're going to have to go all the way down this gosh damn list here too to find it, because now my brain cramp has just reached. Even though I've talked about him numerous times, when he did get in for Moulet, and he actually did a pretty good job, I talked about him, and now I'm completely drawing a blank on his name. Trey Deer. Oh, my God, Trey Deer. What kind of moron am I? So I was originally calling for Trey Deer. If you're going to put an off-ball guy in who's going to draw a shorty and not score points, why not give Trey Deer that time, start developing him, because Moulet is gone after this. What they did was better. They bring Leo down. It pays dividends immediately, because as soon as they put Leo down at attack, he scores this goal here, unassisted, dodging into the middle of the field, something that Moulet hasn't been able to do barely at all this season. So that was another huge turning point. And Moulet did not get shifted into the midfield for Leo. Syracuse has 2 very good midfield lines, maybe the best second midline in the country. Leo runs with the first team middies, and what they did, instead of, I think, running lines the rest of that game, it seemed, was just went with a 5-man rotation. They pulled Leo out of the rotation. They stopped using the lines, and I think they just went with a 5-man rotation, working in those top 5 mids beyond Leo. It worked out. It was huge, and I hope we see this for the rest of the tournament. I hope we see Michael Leo starting on attack. I don't want to shit on Moulet or anything like that, but it's just a production issue. The way the matchups work, Syracuse had 2 pulls on their midfielders, which are their dodging strength all that time. So it's good to be able to now have 3 poles guarding attackmans for once and let the midfielders kind of work, and that paid out huge, as we see Finn Thompson, midfielder goal, Sam English, midfielder goal, John Mullen off the faceoff, who cares, Jake Stevens, that was pretty crazy. I think that may have been, that was, either way, another midfielder goal. You see over the course of that stretch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 midfield goals out of the 9, and that freed Syracuse up, and I think that change was huge. Another really key play in this game was Riley Figueroa. Riley Figueres. I always mispronounce his name. I know it. When I read it, I mispronounce it, but when I say it, I know how to pronounce it. Figueres, that snag on the fast break coming down the field, I believe at that time the score was 9-9, if I'm correct. He snags that fast break cross crease feed out of the air. Syracuse goes back up the other way, and I believe they scored off that next possession. That was absolutely huge. As I said, Will Mark, he looked rough, played terrible. I was afraid they were going to bench him at the half. They could have. You could make the argument they should have. They didn't, and he makes 6 second-half saves to help Syracuse pull away and advance here. And then another huge point, on a day that Mason Cone struggled, John Mullen just came through in the clutch, absolutely was a monster on the day. He goes 18 of 23 at the faceoff dot on a day that Mason Cohn was only 5 of 15, and he had a goal and assist on top of it. So not only is it good to see that Syracuse, between the two of them, are set at the dot through the rest of the season, but it's good to see that Syracuse's faceoff situation is good for the years coming because Mullen, I believe, is just a freshman here. So big day for the Orange, big playoff win. I think it's their first quarterfinal appearance here since 2017 now. So I'm pumped to see this matchup against Denver. Now we got to talk about Denver. They put up a big game here against Michigan. Now, the score in this one would indicate, once again, it was a solid game, but it wasn't. This was the reverse of the Syracuse and Notre Dame games where Syracuse and Notre Dame both got a scare early and then came back and kind of rolled to a small margin of victory. In this one, after Michigan tied things up at ones, Denver goes on an 8-goal run, and then they never looked back after that. Now, with a score like that, I'd have assumed that the Denver, our boy here, Alex Stathakis, would have dominated at the faceoff dot. Not so. Almost just kind of split. Michigan ends up edging him a little bit, 17 to 31, because Justin Whitefeld had a good day. I mean, he's an animal, so he's really good at the dot, obviously. But I would have expected, by looking at this stat line, to see Stathakis edge him a little bit more than he did. Let's see if that was the case maybe early on in terms of the faceoff battle. Not really, 8-7 over the course of the first half. And that was in favor of Michigan at that point. So that was when Denver had already pulled away. So that I thought was just kind of a weird stat. When you look at things, they don't always line up the way that you expect. I think the biggest key to victory here for Denver ends up being depth in scoring. When Richie Connell's showing up early in a game and looks more like what I expected him to be when he first transferred to Denver, you're in trouble after that. His 2 goals were big during that 8-goal run that helped bury the Wolverines. In all, 8 Pioneers put up at least 2 points, paced by Mick Kelly going for 3 and 2, and then JJ Silstrop 3 goals, Cody Milosky 3 goals, Joshua Carlson 3 assists. I mean, you just look down here. I think they had 8 guys. What was the number again? Yeah, 8 Pios put up at least 2 points. Just a hell of a job in terms of their depth. Denver didn't silence Michigan's best players in the end here. Ryan Cohen 3 and 3, Justin Tiernan 4 and 1. But what Denver did a good job of was limiting everybody else. Michael Boehm just 1 and 1 off 4 shots. Mulholland here just 1 and 1 off 6 shots. So they did an excellent job of shutting down everyone who wasn't named Cohen and Tiernan, and that obviously helped them. One of Denver's biggest issues here over the years, last few years at least, has been inconsistency in cage. Malcolm Kleben's been here for a little bit, but he's been streaky, and I think he might have even split time last year. His 10 saves, 11 goals against, good enough to get them to win. He had a 71% save percentage against, who was it? Like Providence or something like that, and then he'd been below 50% in every game since then. 41% between the pipes in their loss to Villanova, 47% against Marquette. I believe they won that game at the end of the season. But he was good enough here, and he's been good enough this season that I think that consistency in cage, even if he's not great all the time, he's been solid, and I think that's helped Denver with their pretty decent defense. But that 48 against Michigan, hey, 48% in terms of your stops, that was good enough on a day like this where where Denver just rolled and Michigan just couldn't put it together here. Hunter Taylor had a terrible day in cage, 8 saves against 16 goals against, and that's in the end all she wrote here. Denver advances, and they will play Syracuse. We'll talk about this at the end here when we do the matchups, and I'll make my predictions here and stuff like that. Next one, St. Joseph's lost to Virginia. Close for the first 15 minutes of the game. St. Joe's came out with a 10-man ride. That gave UVA trouble early. UVA adjusted over by the end of that first quarter, beginning of the second, they had adjusted and they pretty much rolled from there. Cormier becomes the all-time NCAA goal-scoring leader with 8 goals in this game. He tied a UVA record for single-game goals in a game. He's the all-time NCAA goal leader, as I said. A great quote out of Anish Shroff in the middle of this game. And then actually here, I'm going to bring up my Twitter even to just show the quote here. Where the heck is it? And actually, we're going to show this. I must have been more active Yeah, we're just going to stop here. I'm not going to show you the tweet. But anyway, the quote from Anish, he scored more goals than everyone who's ever played Division I lacrosse. And just to hear that statement and to be able to realize for yourself as Peyton Cormier that, hey, that's what I've done, that's pretty dope. That is the truth, and that would make me feel pretty good. Biggest key to victory in this game, UVA got Jurassic Park back. I love that they're calling the UVA defense Jurassic Park. They played well. They're just too big, long, athletic. It made it difficult for St. Joe's to do all of the things that they traditionally have done well to get to this point, mainly score goals, both off dodges and off ball. Very proficient offensive team, and the Virginia defense being back together for sure flummoxed that and hurt them a little bit. Notes, UVA broke their 4-game losing streak. I actually hadn't really paid that close attention to realize, like, holy shit, UVA lost 4 games in a row after beating UNC 14-6 at home on April 6th. UVA lost their 4 next games. They lost to Duke 18-12, Syracuse 18-17, and then twice to Notre Dame 11-9 and 18-9. So they hadn't won a game since April 6th. So this win here was huge. St. Joe's broke their 12-game winning streak. They started 0-3 on the season after losing to Boston U, Duke, and Towson, all very good teams. And actually, I had been picking St. Joe's to finish solid all year long, or all preseason, and then they come out 0-3. I'm thinking, shit, was I wrong? But then they did rattle off 12 straight wins and didn't lose again until this weekend here. So next up for Virginia will be Hopkins. And actually here, I hate Virginia stats, but, Connor Schellenberger, 2 goals, 5 assists on the day, so he factored exactly as you would expect him to. Jack Boyden, 1 and 2. Yeah, these morons don't let us. Oh, they do let us sort them. What kind of dick am I? Chirping Virginia here. And they did let me sort it. McCabe Millen, 1 and 1 here. Ryan Colsey is a guy I've been excited to see him develop, 1 goal. So anyway, Virginia, you know what you're getting from them. They're filthy, so shut the fuck up. Let's move on to Johns Hopkins here. They took on Lehigh. They end up winning 13-10. Now, this is the game of the weekend, I think, where the scare that was put into the home team actually came in the fourth quarter instead of like over the course of the first half. Lehigh managed to take a 9-8 lead early in the fourth. Hopkins would later tie it, and Lehigh took a 10-9 lead with 6:41 left in the game. After that 10-9 lead, Hopkins woke up offensively. They score 4 unanswered goals to tie it up, take back the lead, and then pull away for the victory. Now, the biggest keys to victory in this game for me, Matt Collison scored the eventual game winner and seemed to come up with points whenever Hopkins needed them most. Now, this is going to be a little bit weird, and I'm kind of nitpicking a statistic here, but I'm going to do it. My show. I get to do what the hell I want to. Down 1-0, Collison scored on a dish from Angelus, knotted things up. Down 2-1, Collison scored on another dish from Angelus. That knotted things up again. They're tied 5 up. Collison scored unassisted to give Hop a 1-goal lead. They're tied late, 10 up. Collison scored on a feed from Bauer to give Hop the lead for good. I'm a big fan of this kid. He's Hopkins' 3rd leading scorer, 23 goals, 9 helpers, and I think that they need to feed this beast over and over again against Virginia. In Hopkins' win over Virginia earlier in the year, Collison had 4 goals and an assist off 8 shots. When he's playing well, Hopkins is usually playing well. And the fact he's played well recently, pretty much this full season, is the reason Hopkins has had so much success here. He went scoreless in their first 2 games of the season. He's put up at least 2 points in all but 1 game through the rest of the year. That Big Ten tournament loss to Michigan was the only other scoreless game he had. His 4 goals and 4 assists against Lehigh, that ties, I believe, his career high, or not career high, season high. Another key factor here, Chase Erlin was very good in cage. Best goalie of the weekend, perhaps. 13 saves, 10 goals against. 8 of those 13 saves came over the middle of the game, second and third quarters, as Hopkins kind of struggled offensively, and Lehigh just kept giving it to him and giving it to him. They just kept feeding him and feeding him and feeding him. Shout out, Method Man. So yeah, that was huge. Those saves over that period allowed Hopkins to keep pace with Lehigh, and then finally that offense woke up and they were able to run from there here. So big game here for Hopkins, and they're going to have to take on Virginia, as we talked about here. If we come down here and we look at 4-1 for Collison, Angelus was 2-2, Bauer 1-2, Peshko 2-1, Degnan 2-0. I mean, you just pick your poison, man. They're monsters here. Not great at the faceoff dot. That may factor a little bit against Virginia. We shall see. But like I said, Chase Erlin, 13 saves, 10 goals against. Hell of a job by that kid. Next game we are going to talk about. We're at what here now? 19 minutes and 45 seconds. Next game that we're going to talk about, Maryland against Princeton. Biggest surprise of the weekend for me, not that Maryland won. I took Maryland in every bet that I took. I think I had them in a money line bet over Princeton, and I had them in a parlay bet over Princeton as well. But what I was surprised by in this one, and I'm going to just pump right into the biggest key to this victory, and it's not Luke Weirman absolutely fucking Princeton up at the faceoff dot. What I was the most impressed by was that Maryland won this game. Let me preface this here. All week you heard Maryland's going to lose because Princeton's playing well. Maryland's offense sucks. Doesn't matter how good their defense or Luke Weirman is. Even Weirman hadn't been great lately. Everyone just said Maryland's offense sucks. They can't score goals. They're going to lose to Princeton because they can't beat anybody on the dodge. And I think the thing that stuck out like a sore thumb outside of Weirman being a man among boys was that they beat everybody on the dodge. Like, this game started out with Maryland winning one-on-one matchups, getting to the rack, scoring goals, and then even after Princeton adjusted, then they just started feeding goals here. But we look for Maryland, unassisted. I mean, you look at that over the course of that first half, how many unassisted goals they scored. They had not been doing that. That's why they had been struggling offensively. They weren't winning one-on-one matchups. They just didn't have a dog that could beat a man, and they beat everybody. Everybody beat their man against Princeton here. One thing I noticed specifically was Maliver and Chorus. Both had great games. Maliver was dodging on dudes and scoring unassisted goals. Maliver had 3 goals and 2, each of them. Maliver and Chorus each had 3 goals, 2 helpers. Eric Spanos puts up 4 goals. Daniel Kelly 2-1. Maltz 2-0. They had the perfect balance of creating easy opportunities off the dodge, and when Princeton adjusted, started sliding a little bit more, they just buried them even worse. I think maybe the biggest key, though, we'll throw it out there, Luke Weirman, oh ho hum. Luke Weirman did what Luke Weirman does, or what Luke Weirman traditionally does. He goes 20 of 26 at the faceoff dot, had an assist. That was obviously huge. They body bagged Princeton in terms of time of possession, in terms of the number of possessions. So that obviously played a huge role in the victory. Another huge factor, Maryland defense, incredible all day. Ajax Zapatello, 3 caused turnovers and a GB. Maryland stifled the Princeton offense over and over again. Coulter Mackesy, quiet, 1 goal, 2 assists off 9 shots. Now, that's the key. It wasn't that Mackesy wasn't getting looks. That would have been better for Princeton than Mackesy getting looks and missing those shots and only scoring 1 of 9. Princeton's not good enough to overcome a 1 of 9 shooting day by their best player against a defense like Maryland's. And then Princeton goalie Michael Gianfrancaro, who's been good all year here. As we see, he makes just 9 saves against 16 goals against, completely uncharacteristic of him. But the Maryland offense, they were getting a lot of very easy doorstep looks. So I'm not trying to shit on Gianfrancaro for that outing. The Princeton defense played terrible. Or did the Maryland offense play incredible? I'm not sure which it was, but those 2 things combined made it rough for Gianfrancaro. Logan McNaney, 11 saves, 8 goals against. He had a great day. Incredible goalkeeper. Dude's got a national championship under his belt already. Don't front on that or forget that fact. And yeah, that's it. McNaney wins the goalie battle. The Maryland defense was all over the field. The Maryland offense just beat everybody all over the field as well. They win the game, and we move on from there. And we are now going to talk about Duke and Utah. Another easy win for the home team here. I thought Utah did a good job. I think they showed up. They impressed me. They didn't embarrass themselves by any means. I think in this game, the biggest key to victory, Dyson Williams played like he was in a rage. He lost the starting attack spot to McAdory in the ACC tournament. I believe he started on attack in this game, if I'm not mistaken. And the fact that he didn't play attack in that NCAA tournament game against what was it? Was it Syracuse that they did that? They looked incredible. He looked incredible. It's like, why hasn't that been happening all season? They had McAdory, Zawada, and O'Neal at attack. And all they did was they bumped Williams to midfield, so he still got his looks. He still put points up in those games. But in this game, 8 shots, 5 goals. The look on his face was that of a stone-cold killer. If this Duke offense is drawing slides and this kid is dialed in like he was this weekend, Maryland's going to have problems next weekend. Maryland is a decent off-ball team, as evidenced by how well they played against Syracuse. So if anyone can kind of neutralize Duke both on the dodge and off-ball, Maryland's that team, but Duke has more than just Williams as off-ball threats, as all of their midfielders can light it up from outside. So, we'll see what happens. But Brennan O'Neill, quiet, 2-2, 6 shots. Not too bad. Didn't need to be better than that. Josh Zawada, 4 goals, 4 helpers on the day off just 5 shots. So he's solidified the fact he definitely belongs on that tack. He's been solidifying that all year. I mean, he's had a great season for Duke. I think something else that's been huge for Duke, both this season and in this game specifically, goalkeeper Patrick Jamieson, freshman, been great all season. He goes for 11 saves against 7 goals against, looked very comfortable early and often in this game, and in his first NCAA tournament appearance at that. So if their offense is going to be good in this tournament, the defense is going to obviously be good in this tournament, but if Jamieson on top of it can hang in the 50% plus range in pipe, I like Duke's chances of beating Maryland and advancing to the Final Four come next weekend. He's an excellent goaltender. I did not expect him to start. I thought the Princeton transfer would start this season, so a huge surprise, and he's been nothing but holding his own in the cage all season long for Duke. Georgetown, Penn State. Now, this game fucked up my parlay. I had a 6-game parlay, I believe it was, that paid 9-1. Penn State looked to be in control at 9-7 late in the third. I'm thinking I'm looking pretty good because that was the last game I believe that was played, and all my other legs had already won on that parlay. And then Georgetown ends up rattling off 5 consecutive goals to close out the game and take the game. Biggest keys to victory here. Anderson Moore in cage for Georgetown. Opposite him is Frasian for Penn State. Moore was up to the challenge, 10 saves, 9 goals against. His fourth quarter saves were huge. As Penn State, in that stretch where Georgetown's pulling away, Penn State only managed to put 4 shots on cage, and Anderson Moore came up with 4 saves over the course of that fourth quarter. That allowed the Hoyas offense to gain some ground and then pull away eventually. Ty Banks was an absolute monster on defense for Georgetown. If we come down here and we look at his caused turnover total, Ty Banks, 4 caused turnovers, a goal, 3 GBs. That's a hell of a game there, son. So good job by him. Offensively, Georgetown, Jack Schubert, 3 goals and an assist. Jordan Ray, 4 goals. The young guys kind of stepped up and played. Aiden Carroll, 1-1. TJ Haley, 0-2. Vardaro, 0-2. So the geezers kind of stepped up and played. Graham Bundy Jr. Now, this was a stat. I would see this stat normally, and if you asked me what happened on a day that Graham Bundy Jr. scored 1 goal off 11 shots, my answer would have been Georgetown lost. Maybe in a close game, but Georgetown lost. So everybody else played well enough, and they were efficient enough. Guys like Jordan Ray, 4 goals, 4 shots. Aiden Carroll shot terrible too. So I'm surprised to see a couple of these guys shoot so poorly, and for Georgetown to still win the game here. But especially with Frasian not playing terrible. I guess that's a testament to the number of shots that Georgetown got on cage here against Frasian in the end. But either way, Anderson Moore in cage was, I think, the big thing. The Georgetown defense doing a good job and finally shutting Penn State down. They did not do that early. Let a lot of Penn State guys get their hands free, easy shots early on in that game. They got their shit together. They end up winning, and they advance. And then the shittiest box score of them all, fucking Notre Dame still using PDF box scores like it's fucking 1998 or something like that. Notre Dame pulls away. They beat Albany. Yes, Albany managed to keep it respectable and interesting and even held a 5-4 halftime lead, similar to how that Towson game kind of went with Syracuse. But I wasn't really worried for Notre Dame even at halftime. I expected them to come out and outscore Albany. They did that. They outscored them 10-4 in the second half. They outscored them 5-1 over the course of the third quarter to take control. The usual suspects doing all the cooking. Jake Taylor, 3 goals. Chris Cav, 1-4. Pat Cav, 3-2. All had big games. Devin McClain, the big cat of the day, though, he puts up 4 goals on the day. Off-ball guy. Where did he transfer out of? Was it Brown? Did Devin McClain transfer out of Brown? I'm drawing a blank here on that right now. And, in the end, Albany loses, Notre Dame advances. I'm just not covering that one a lot because we all knew that, and I've already been talking for a long time here. So now let us go to Inside Lacrosse, and just for shits and giggles, I do want to put out a preview show, and I'm going to try to put out a preview show just in case what has been happening happens again and work gets the best of me here, or family or whatever ends up getting in the way. I want to go through and at least make my picks here for this weekend here. I'm going Notre Dame over Georgetown. I think that it might even be by a large spread, maybe 4 or 5 goals, because I think Notre Dame's going to be angry after Georgetown was the only team this season to beat them early in the season. When was it? Yeah, here, 10-11. 11-10, Georgetown beat Notre Dame early in the year. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Notre Dame over Georgetown. I'm going with Duke over Maryland. I am going to go with, this is a tough one here. Hopkins, Virginia is the one I'm picking. You guys all know who I'm taking, Syracuse, Denver. Who was it I saw? Who was it? Brian Knows Lax? Was it Brian? Who had posted his hatred of Maryland cost him a perfect weekend in terms of predicting games. I think it was Brian that said that, which is pretty funny. And my love of Syracuse in this case is going to not cause me to be able to pick against them. I'm going to go with Virginia over Hopkins, and I'm going to go with Syracuse over Denver. And it's crazy because that I would normally not do that because I think picking an all ACC Final Four is ridiculous and stupid. The reason I feel okay doing it is because for the first time in 20 years, we had all of the seeded teams win. So every seeded team, every home team picked up a win this weekend. It's the first time in 20 years. I think we're going to see an all ACC Final Four. And I think Virginia's going to beat Hopkins in a close one. I think Syracuse will beat Denver. And I really do actually think Syracuse will beat Denver in a very close game here. I think that the Virginia Hopkins one's the main coin flip that I have. I do think Duke will beat Maryland. I think Notre Dame. The Duke Maryland one is interesting because Naso hasn't been playing. He's been hobbled, and after the monster game that Weirman just had, that could absolutely factor in this Duke Maryland game. Let's see here. Did they play each other during the regular season? I could have swore they did. Apparently not. Oh yeah, they did. No, they didn't. That's down here. So yeah, I don't know. Those are my picks though. All ACC Final Four is what I am going with here. And I think I'll do a preview. I'll try to get a preview show out. Even if I do it Saturday morning, maybe I'll just do a quick live stream Saturday morning and we can do a preview show that way. So we'll see what happens. But I am going to get out of here now, and I'm going to get my ass to work. Glad that I could sit down and do a podcast this morning. As always, go to LaxFactor.com. Support us that way. You can just go to the site, watch the videos there. You can order yourself a t-shirt. And like I said, watch and listen to us on Spotify. The video version of this podcast is on Spotify. You can skip all the ads, but I still get paid for them. So for everybody who's watching on YouTube, I'm not trying to get you off of YouTube. I want the YouTube channel to do well also. But for those real loyal guys, Spotify is definitely better for me. So I want to push that a little bit for people. So that's it. Like, share. Talk to people about what we're doing here. One of these days I'm going to get my shit together and I will not miss weekends, but this year was especially tough with just how busy work has been. I got to get that cheddar, man. Working, I try not to get out of bed for less than 100 an hour. And when you have a situation here where it's like, hey, people are willing to pay me, what I deserve to be paid. And there's a podcast here where I might make $2 an hour, $1 an hour. You got to pick the cheddar. As my daughter would say. I don't think my daughter's ever said that, actually. I don't even know why I said that. So that's it. I'm rambling. I'm out. Hopefully I'm back Saturday morning for a quick live stream. I will definitely do a show following this weekend, just like I managed to get one out here today after the weekend worth of playoff games. So just look Monday or Tuesday for that to drop. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And Hoost is out.
The LaxFactor Podcast.